Did this self-proclaimed world-famous DIYer bite off more than he can chew? You DI done did it now. Stay tuned to find out. Welcome everyone, my name is Philip and today I'm going to start demoing our bathroom. So we bought this house a few years ago as a fixer-upper and have been working on a few other projects, but we're finally getting around to remodeling the master bath, starting with the shower. As you can see, I started chipping away some of the tile already because I had to get our new windows ordered. So I wanted to get a good measurement of the rough opening so I could order the right size. It looks like this shower is probably original to about mid-80s, early 90s, which was around the time this house was built. So we're definitely looking forward to getting this bathroom updated. First, I'll start by taking a box cutter or razor blade and cutting around the edges of the tile before I start chipping off the walls so I have a nice clean line. So demo day one went well. Excuse the bath fan. Right now the fan and the light are wired on one switch. Eventually it'll be split into two. As you can see behind me, I ripped everything out. Still waiting on the windows to arrive. And if you notice below the window, there was some old insulation that had some water damage, so I ripped that out. I also ripped out some of the footer boards and I'll be replacing those. The original concrete shower base needs to come out also, as well as this steam shower box above my head. Some of you may be a fan of that steam shower box, but unfortunately we don't like it, so we're going to take it out, and that will bump up the ceiling height a little bit, inside the shower at least, and then I hope to install a rain head on one side of the shower. Alright, so the thickness of this valve body is 2 9/16. I've got to mount it where the edge of this ring is flush with the finished wall. So I estimate my wall thickness with the Dura-Rock is a 1/2 inch, plus the tile, which is a 1/4 inch, plus mortar, I'm close to about 1 inch, and this gives you about a 1/4 inch, give or take either way. So I will measure in 1 inch and 9/16 to mount the stringer that this valve body will mount to. Here I used pocket holes to mount the piece of wood that the shower head elbow will attach to. It's very similar to the piece of wood that the valve body will be attached to. Gave her the old shake test. Here I used a paddle bit to drill holes for the PEX to pass through into the attic. I recommend planning out your shower layout such as fixture heads, niches, and benches. This will give you an idea of where you can run your piping. So I chose PEX Type A, also known as the Uponor system, to replumb the bathroom. After considering the differences, I like how the Uponor stretches around fittings instead of having the diameter of the pipe reduced to the inside diameter of the fittings. It also seemed a little more forgiving when making the connections. The electric Uponor expansion tool is around $500. Since I only had to make a few connections, I opted for the manual tool. The cost for the manual tool and the fitting is about $70. As you can see, installing PEX is really fast, and there are minimal connections since it requires less fittings to make turns. So here's a demonstration in real time of about how long it takes to expand one connection. First, you slip the expansion collar on the end of the pipe, and then use the tool to slowly expand the collar and the end of the pipe. I rotated the expansion tool during the process to evenly expand the pipe and the collars. Once the end is fully expanded, It easily slips over the fitting and you just have to hold it in place for about 15 or 30 seconds as it shrinks back down, and you'll feel when it has a snug grip on that fitting. The shower valve was originally on the left side, which made you either have to reach over the toilet to turn the water on, or get sprayed by cold water when you first turn it on, unless you move super fast out of the way. So I opted to move it to the right hand side, and there's also going to be a 6-way diverter built into the shower valve and 3 shower heads total in the new shower. Here I cleaned up the old copper before making the cut. I find this easier than trying to sand the end of the pipe. This eliminates the possibility of water coming out of the pipe while I'm sanding it, or a bunch of junk going into the water pipe. I deburred the end of the pipe, then applied a solder flux, which is necessary when soldering or sweating the copper and brass fittings. So here's a look from above the shower in the attic, before and after the insulation is reinstalled. Before wrapping the PEX in insulation, I anchored it to the truss. Next, I had to remove some studs that were going to be relocated, or they were in the way of the exterior demo. Good morning, everyone. So today's a pretty big day for the bathroom demo. When I was demoing the inside, I found some rotten boards that need to be replaced. So today I'll be taking off the exterior siding, pulling out a window, replacing those studs, and possibly reusing the old siding or installing new siding. I've got new windows to go in as well. So as the cool kids say, let's get after it. When I started demoing the exterior, I began by cutting the caulking around the window and the trim before removing them. My arms are looking pretty buff from this angle. I'm pretty sure it's the lighting. Lighting is key, folks. When the Wonder Bar just wasn't cutting it anymore, I had to use my bare hands and rip it off. At this point in the demo, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to reuse the Hardie board siding, but because of the way it was attached and how easily it breaks around the nail heads, I ended up having to replace it. So I would recommend expecting to replace the Hardie board siding. Once the old window was out, I proceeded to rip out the old studs. I used the Sawzall with a multi-purpose blade in the areas where I couldn't pry out the nails. I just cut them, and it made pretty light work of cutting the nails. Here's a shaky shot of some of the cuts I had to make. Of course, I made the cuts on my miter saw, which is attached to my folding workbench. If you haven't seen that video already, be sure to check it out. The 4x8 full shop workbench build video. I cut all these cripple studs at a 5-degree angle. That way the windowsill slopes outwards. So cripple studs are the term used to describe the studs below the window opening. Jack studs are on either side of those, and then king studs go from the stud along the slab to the stud at the top. And here's a look at all the nice fresh studs. To the right you can see the other bathroom, which had a similar issue, and I'll be replacing that next once we get this first bathroom rebuilt. This is a trick I picked up from Carpentry by Mar on Instagram to slice your insulation bats, but you know that whole Instagram versus reality thing. I went ahead and insulated this cavity because I had no access to this area from the inside. After that, I attached the Tyvek house wrap, taped up all the seams, making sure it was nice and sealed. The top layers of Tyvek overlap the bottom layers at least 6 inches. So everything is nice and taped up and sealed. I cut the Tyvek wrap so I can put it over the window flange and then tape it down. On the sill, this is angled at 5 degrees, and I will be using this zip tape to make a flashing to go from the windowsill over the house wrap. That way if the window leaks, all the water will run over the house wrap and not inside the interior walls. Alright, and here is the zip tape, zip flexible flashing tape stuck to the sill. It's got that 5-degree angle, and then it sticks to the outside of the house wrap, so all the water, if anything leaks, it'll run down the house wrap. In my case, I shimmed the window at least 1/4 inch above the sill, so it's not really resting on the sill. The window flange that holds it to the studs is what's holding it up. I also applied a bead of caulking around the flange of the window before installing it. Once the window was installed, I installed the new siding and reused the window trim. I'll end up replacing it later when I do the other bathroom. I was pretty excited to get to the point where I could start insulating the interior wall. I used rock wool, which is essentially made from lava rocks instead of fiberglass. Here I applied the low expansion window foam around the edges. It's a lot harder than it looks. Of course, when it was done expanding, I had to go around and clean up all the excess foam with a razor blade. Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm not sure if it's morning where you're at, but today it's a new day here, and I'm going to work on insulating the bathroom wall. So I'd like to share a cool trick I learned from a guy on Instagram. His Instagram is Carpentry by Mar. It's a trick on how to cut your insulation bats. Mar on Instagram had a contraption similar to this that he built. It was a little different and it looked like his worked a little better. He also used a long, sturdy razor blade to cut the insulation, so I recommend doing all those things. This worked, it just wasn't quite as easy as it looked on Instagram. Again, that whole Instagram versus reality thing. Nevertheless, it actually worked really well to get a nice clean cut. There were a couple small gaps along one of the edges that I just packed with loose insulation. This step may not really be necessary, but I insulated both the hot and the cold PEX pipes. Who would have thought that there's actually 3 versions of this pipe insulation? One of them does not have any adhesive. This one has a pre-adhesive on there where you just peel the tape off and stick it together. There's also a rubberized version, which I think is for outdoor use. This is a progress shot of where we're currently at. It feels really good to get to this point considering where we started. Well, thank you so much for checking out the video. Thank you for everyone that supports the channel. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Be sure to check out part 2 of the bathroom rebuild, where I build the shower pan, level the walls, hang the Durock, do the waterproofing, and I'm really excited to get the tiling started.